Do you have a suggestion for a Rockstar Impact Podcast guest? Go to impactpodcast.com and just click Be a Guest to recommend someone today. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigarian, and this is a very special edition. Today, we've got with us Erin Archuleta. She's the head of Global External Affairs and Social Responsibility at Block. Welcome, Erin, to the Impact Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Really a pleasure to have you. And before we get talking about everything you're doing in impact and social responsibility over at Block, can you tell us a little bit about your background, Erin? Where did you grow up and how did you get on this very interesting and important journey that you're on?
Oh, so I am from Flint, Michigan. It's a factory town. It's a town that when I grew up, it lived in 3 shifts, I would say. And so just like the factory lines. And one of the things that I grew up with was a real model of community, of interconnectedness, of how a sense of place can bring pride and define who you are and really weave joy into what defines your local community's wins. So Flint, I know sometimes it gets other headlines. Yes. But I would say that in the era in which I grew up, it was an era in which the auto industry was in decline. The 80s, the 90s. What I have found is that the generations to follow have redefined community and small business there. And so, in fact, I know we'll get into this later when we get into Square, but some colleagues there came to me and said, hey, what's going on in your hometown? We're noticing these weird small business trends where small businesses jumped 128% over the course of 2 years. What's happening there? What magic is happening? And the magic really was neighbors coming together, supporting one another, helping each other build small business communities. And I got to work on a film about my hometown and its resurgence and its rebirth. And so that film is called Forged in Flint, which you can find at squareup.com/dreams. And it's all about what it takes to make a thriving downtown. The different pieces. So that's the where I'm from piece. The how I got there is a non sequitur. So I went to school to be a theater major and a classroom teacher. So I was a theater and English teacher, a reading specialist. And I loved every single second of teaching middle school, which is maybe not something you hear from everybody. Though I really hope that everybody who has been a teacher got a chance to really love teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's a special time. It's a time when kids are still dreaming in possibility and are imagining and building their world in schema. I also taught high school and junior American literature and theater. So it was really fun. I moved from Michigan to the Bay Area, and I was part of the founding team at a literacy organization called 826 Valencia. And what we did there was actually a front for children's literacy. We had this funny retail storefront requirement for our nonprofit. So when we first inked our lease, we were required to be a small business from the beginning. And so we looked around at the building for cues. And one of our co-founders is a prominent author, Dave Eggers. And Dave was standing with some other volunteers and said, "You guys, what does this building really look like?" And the way the rafters were built and the warmth of the old wood, the building was more than 100 years old, told the story of a pirate ship. And so then we built in the front of the storefront a pirate supply store. So our retail model was for the working buccaneer.
Wow.
I know. So this actually became this magical third place that did not feel like a punitive homework help after school center. It felt like this funny, magical, delightful room you'd step in. And then we were able to, in the early days, fund up to 10% of our nonprofit revenue by being a small business. So this model worked really well. We scaled it nationally. I got the opportunity to work on international education licensing, began to work with nonprofits around the globe and learn from other nonprofit executive directors. I rose through the ranks as a nonprofit employee and helped run the organization for a while, and began working on education public policy, advocating for students in classrooms, their families, and what they needed to participate in the economy long term and be successful. At the same time, I married a sushi chef. And when that happened, we began to fulfill our dreams of opening and running a catering company, a little sushi deli, and a fine dining restaurant. So we owned multiple restaurant properties over the course of 10 years. We lived with food reviewers and Zagat and Michelin and celebrities who would come in and dine, and the pressure of waiting on Martha Stewart. I mean, like all of the things. Like, yeah, you're standing in front of a legend. You're like, don't drop a thing. But in that work and the day-to-day of the practicality of running a small business, being an employer, thinking about what it meant to show up for my neighborhood, my community, and my industry on the restaurant board, running a merchant association, and advocating for small business policy, I was then invited to join Square and be a part of their team in the early days in 2015. So that's what brought me to Square. It was this sort of non-linear path through education, nonprofit, restaurant ownership, and through all of it, all of the tenets of what it means to be an important, invested corporate citizen, even at the smallest level, right? Matter. Like what kind of fish I sourced mattered. What kind of neighbor I was to my neighborhood association mattered. So all of this work, I mean, you can talk about it in a global scale, but it comes back to the people you're serving.
I love it. And it comes back to the common thread of your life of you're a community woman. You started in the community. You loved where you were raised, in that community feeling, and everything you've done throughout your life in education, then in food, is all about community and service. That's wonderful. Absolutely. That is just wonderful. So is there a restaurant that still exists, or is there any food that's still in the family? Okay.
My husband and I have had a little Japanese sushi deli in the Flint, Michigan farmers market for the last couple of years. And so it's been really wonderful to make our food in my hometown and to bring really, like family recipes really from his sensei.
It's so amazing. And he's from originally Japan?
So he is from Sacramento, California.
Oh my gosh.
But I convinced him to move to Michigan and live in the snow. But he trained he's been making sushi for 30 years, and he trained for 10 years under a master sushi chef. So just like Jiro dreams of sushi. It's
right. Mm-hmm. That's so wonderful. It's so funny you brought up Flint, Michigan. When I started, my company is banked by Co-America Bank, the Environmental Services Division, which are still in Detroit. And I started going to downtown Detroit when they started banking me in 2007. And the transformation I've seen in downtown Detroit in 18 years has been magical. Talk about magical. It's a whole different city. Same thing. Like you said, small businesses came in and backfilled that wonderful, what is now a wonderful reborn downtown as well there. So Michigan's got something good that's happening all throughout the state. It's good things are happening.
I agree. Thank you.
How many years ago you joined Block back in what year?
In 2015.
Okay.
So,
What was your first job there? Like, what was your first title and job then?
yeah, I was on the experiential marketing team, and many of my same colleagues are still at the company, though within different business units or projects or roles.
Right.
And I think that even in the earliest days of marketing, it was so clear neighborhoods mattered, the small businesses we were serving and their individual stories mattered. We've always had a real approach around our purpose of economic empowerment to listen to what customers and communities need, and then try to find the simplest solutions that we can to provide to them to really support them. So I got this opportunity to do storytelling and creative work and all of the pieces that I would use in a classroom or that I would use at a nonprofit or even in a restaurant, frankly. I feel like that's more theater than theater sometimes. But with that, I got to deploy and employ those skills. But like the nerd in me really wanted out. So I began volunteering to work on public policy projects. I think that part of what I love and what anyone who's looking to work in this field could lean into is where your individual strengths are. And so a lot of my individual strengths are really around enjoying the long path to fruition with work. So I don't need immediate results on something. I need to know that whatever I'm doing day to day will build towards something better for someone. And so I remember signing up to work on projects in the early days that would help, with making sure that small business owners would have access to capital. I knew firsthand what it meant. I remember when Tim and I started our catering company, our restaurant, this was before Square existed. So we started back in 2000, I think 6. We were dating when we started our business. I don't know. I won't give marriage advice on this podcast.
Wow.
But when we started our company, we actually could not get a credit card terminal because catering was a risky industry. And so I had to leverage my used Volvo to get a credit card terminal so that we could cater weddings. And I remembered what that felt like. And then when Square launched its capital product, I went out and I interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers about where they experienced barriers to capital. And then we had this opportunity to extend Square Capital to them. And when that happened, what we found is that even in the earliest pathway of just lending to businesses based on their performance using Square, nothing else, we were already lending to more businesses that were not being reached through traditional capital pathways. So we were already lending to more women, more minority-owned businesses, and rural businesses. And we found at that time that more than 85% of our sellers were outside of the bubble of big urban centers. So we were reaching people wherever they needed to be in that moment. And then, of course, things grow, people grow, companies grow. Now our portfolio is much larger in scope.
I want to just share with our listeners' views. If you're not familiar with what Block is, Block's predecessor company was called Square. There's a beautiful little white thing that attaches to a cell phone. And so just so people understand how big Block has become over the years, as of 2024, serves 57 million users, 4 million sellers, processing over 241 billion in payments annually. Right now, over 24 billion in revenue, over 11,000 employees, and you're serving over 95 countries. So you have a big platform you're part of now. This is no longer just a wonderful startup by Jack Dorsey back in 2009. This is really quite a big company. So talk about how your role continue to evolve over the last 10 years at Block.
Yeah, I joined the public policy team. I knew in my heart I wanted to advocate for small business owners. So I had a role called seller advocate, and I had the opportunity to go to the Hill in the United States to work with my colleagues who were in other countries where we operate as Square. So Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in Japan, and to really learn what mattered to small businesses. What were their barriers to growth, or what would enable them to operate and thrive? And so then I got to work on all kinds of wonderful opportunities to help with everything from how a restaurant could scale, which I knew in my bones, to how I remember when e-commerce was like new. So, how would I know, right? So it's funny to say that, but to think about, what were the principles that they needed to really make their day-to-day lives smooth? And how could someone who, for instance, a big part of that hero story about Flint, Michigan, when I talked about the film earlier,
Yeah.
is that most of those small businesses, yes, they're selling to their neighbor, they're keeping dollars local, but they're also reaching customers from all over the world online. We all know we shop with our phones, and so did they. And so
Right.
they were able to tap into customers beyond their, mileage or their few square blocks of wherever the foot traffic would be. And this was something that I got to watch grow and help accelerate through the years as small business has changed and evolved. And then as that role continued to grow and mature, then I was able to step in to running our public policy partnerships to really advocate for whomever our customer was. I remember when we brought on Tidal Music Streaming Service, I had already been talking to musicians for years who used Square for their merch for their tours, who were excited about integrations to sell tickets to events or festivals. I knew that Cash App was, how you were paying your friend who bought the tickets, or picking up dinner to say thanks, or whatever it was. And so in all of these different intersections, I had this opportunity in my role to really be across the business. I feel like I could kind of unpack that a little bit. So Square, as you said, and people knew us first as that little white
Yeah.
reader. Now, we're powering stadiums. Like, we are supporting the largest of large businesses, and yet still showing up for whatever your dream is. And in that, we're making commerce and financial services accessible to all sellers. Cash App is how folks can send, spend, or store money. Then we have Afterpay, which transforms how customers are managing their spending over time. We also have Tidal, which I mentioned, a music platform for artists and entrepreneurs. And then, this is something maybe you haven't encountered. This is BitKey. So BitKey
Yeah.
is
Wow.
a simple self-custody wallet built for Bitcoin. And we have Proto, which is a suite of Bitcoin mining products and services. So there's a lot more that's happened since I've joined. And now my role in this global format allows me to show up for each audience.
So let's go back to what your first important discussion of purpose and mission.
Mm-hmm.
Locke's real purpose, then, as you said, could be said in a couple different ways. It's about economic empowerment.
Yes.
And also what you're doing, you've democratized the opportunity for all entrepreneurs around the world to actually participate in the entrepreneurial journey. That's fascinating. And
Yeah,
so,
it's so kind to hear that reflected back.
but it's really true. The way you've
Yeah,
explained it, it makes so much sense. And you can then, as you said, you now over the years, you've developed different tools so you can go big like a stadium and small like a single artist and everything in between, including now different forms of capital such as Bitcoin.
absolutely. We were started, Jack Dorsey, who you mentioned earlier, co-founded along with his mentor, Jim McKelvey, Square. Sure. And it was founded because Jim is a brilliant coder and a brilliant engineer, but also little known, an incredible glass artist. So Jim makes the most beautiful blown glass pieces, whether they're giant vases. He had an entire line of homewares. And so back in 2008, 2009, Jim was trying to sell a glass faucet, a custom faucet for a home at a houseware show. And the person on the other side of the purchase only had a credit card. And Jim, because he was an artist, like I mentioned earlier, when I was a caterer, it was hard to get a credit card terminal. Imagine being an artist. So Jim
Right.
struggling to get a credit card terminal and lost that sale. And that sale, as you could imagine, something like a glass faucet is a high ticket item. So Jim thought this is a solvable problem. And so he and Jack together came up with that first square reader that you mentioned, and creating the opportunity for everyone to participate in the economy is just core to who we are. That mission, that purpose driving us. Economic empowerment is really across our whole ecosystem. It's how we think about social responsibility. It's, there's quantitative, there's qualitative, and at the end of the day, it's how are you showing up and how are you impacting your local economy, your neighborhoods, and an individual's experience. What are you doing to make their lives more sustainable overall? So that purpose drives our profit, not the other way around.
Got it. So Jim took the hit on the sale.
Yeah.
So millions of entrepreneurs wouldn't have to. I love it. I love it. Talk a little bit about, let's talk about purpose and mission and profitability, and tie it back to the grander theme of sustainability. As you and I know, sustainability has had some fits and starts the last 20 years, in North America especially, been more embedded in Europe and parts of Asia, developed parts of Asia before the United States, because they're smaller countries. They were geographically constrained and had to be more sustainable and more circular in their behavior than we ever had to be because of our size and scope of this great country. But now we're trying to get with it, and there's been fits and starts. As we know, there's been an alphabet soup of acronyms that were polarized and potentially politicized. But let's talk about what I feel that leaders like you are talking about more than ever before, both in the impact sector, social responsibility sector, and sustainability sector, and tie them all together. It seems as though we're leaving the acronyms behind now, and everyone's focused on materiality to the core mission. So how does what you do, both in global external affairs and social responsibility and sustainability, and what Block is doing in sustainability, tie back to the material mission of economic empowerment?
Yeah, I think that you're right. There's this piece where historically, businesses may have layered sustainability on top of their existing business.
Right.
But we've built it directly into our foundation. So every product decision, every partnership, all the investments we've made are evaluated through the lens of long-term community impact. So we're not just trying to do less harm. We're in fact trying to do more good. And the importance of place in driving that growth and that sustainability for local neighborhoods, it's critical. I mean, I think as a product example, I talked a little bit earlier about Proto, our Bitcoin mining rig, but something like hardware, which we've been building for years. We know hardware. And so Bitcoin mining is incredibly sophisticated hardware, but it also had a really short shelf life. Like most rigs were burning out after 3 years, 5 years. It wasn't a long-term piece of hardware. And what we've done is we've created interchangeable parts that allow the lifetime of that product to go up to 10 years. So when you're able to take something that people will have, a material object, and you're able to extend the life of that, the usefulness of it, then you're going through less. And I mean, I know your background in vid, I know the recycling piece, and I know that that's so critical. But when we're thinking about what we're producing, we're thinking about the end outcome of what that product will do. Similarly, I mean, I think with something like even a climate investment, we're thinking about what the outcome of that investment is. And something that might appear even like kind of an old fashioned, I mean, to me, I'm at home, I'm like a farmer. So I run a little small farm, and I think about the yield of trees, right? So
Right.
so often there's a lot of talk in climate about, what does climate sequester mean, or when you're thinking about climate opportunities, you're talking about really like what are we actually physically doing with the earth. And we have a partner called With One Seed that is part of the Expand Foundation. Our climate partners at Watershed connected us, and with One Seed is based out of Bagua. They're out of Timor-Leste, and it's a cohort of farmers that are planting trees. If you are a subsistence farmer, a tree is a hard sell because you're not making profit for like 20 years on a tree, right? And if you were planting a vegetable crop, you would make money in a season. So when this project started, With One Seed figured out a way whereby tracking tree growth and the health of the trees using RFID technology on trees, they were able to identify and then pay those farmers directly so that they were seeing more immediate benefit to the planting of a tree for long-term climate impact, for long-term community impact. Where Bagua is located has an incredibly intense rainy season and not a lot of infrastructure. So by planting these trees, you're actually creating more stability for roads, for pathways, for schools to be built. And when we had a recent meeting with the farmers from With One Seed, it was incredible. People there don't have access necessarily to cars or trains. So they were waking up 2 or 3 hours before sunlight, walking in the dark to a local community center to be hosted for a Zoom chat, just like we're doing today, so that we could come together in more than 4 languages to talk about why this project matters so specifically to their community. And with that, what the RFID technology meant, what it meant in terms of being able to even track their own progress in real time, and sort of this piece that we know to be true through technology. Technology can really enable smart decision making. So you can course correct, you can amend soil, you can do all sorts of things to really enhance the project. And so with that, I mean, it's been an incredible boon to the community there. And we have felt really lucky to participate in a program like that.
I love it. So do you get to work, Erin, directly with the chief or head of sustainability at Block?
So I am that. So, which is, I mean,
Erin, so nice to know this now.
No, we're really humble. So what's really funny is in the early days of Block, there's been much written about this, is that we're not big on titles. And so we don't have like our titles are more of a descriptor of the action that you're performing, which is funny. Even our CEO does not refer to himself as a CEO. He refers to himself as the Block head. So just know that, I mean, you have to delight in the word.
That's great. I love it. I love the humbleness of it's a self-descriptor that's humble but effective. And
it really is.
no one can misunderstand that. That's for sure.
No, and I should say that something like With One Seed, they've already reinvested $2 million in their community.
Wow.
And when you think about the scale of that in a project that just in a number of years is creating real economic impact at scale, it's something that I'm excited about. Other commitments are, we talked too a little bit about how so often other countries were forward looking, and not everyone in North America has had this lens on the work for so long. One other partner that I'm really, really excited about is Laguna Om. They're out of Quintana Roo. They have an ejido, so a commons, and it's actually been active since 1938. And this is, so what's wonderful about community is often this great work is happening. And it's a matter of, like, to your point, being hands-on, listening deeply, showing up for our customers, figuring out, in this instance, the tool that supports sustainability is investment, right? But if I think about sustainability in the financial system, it's a different type of investment. We have $100 million social impact fund, and that fund that is going to community development financial institutions, minority depository institutions, and local banks. That is creating impact and creating additional capital for additional lending from the institutions and building their balance sheets so that they can better support their communities. So I think about everything from how does a tree build a road for people who need a school to be able to operate during rainy season in Bagua. And then I think about, what does an investment in someone like Southern Bancorp look like to its small business lending portfolio? It's an exciting job. I frankly have my dream job.
I mean, no kidding. I mean, because really, I didn't know this when I first introduced you, but you're really not only head of global external affairs and social responsibility, but that also encompasses sustainability and impact. So you're really, really doing it all. You're really all rolls up to you. How big is your team, by the way? Just so I understand, how big is your
Sure.
yeah.
So our model, again, we're maybe a little non-traditional. I love this model. There's 4 of us on the team, and each person is a specialist. So I've got a financial inclusion lead and ESG investment. And it's so fascinating because his brain works in the sense of true investment and return, qualitative, quantitative impact. And then an education lead, really thinking about how we show up and support and protect customers too. And then a social impact, corporate citizenship lead. So each of those roles, we all align with partners across every aspect of the business.
Wow.
So that no matter what, everyone is a stakeholder in the work together. What's nice about not being removed or separate and doing that work is that you're able to lean right into the earliest conversations and begin to make impact from day one.
So I love that model. But like you said, then how do you then take your team of 4 and then how do you exponentially get your 11,000 plus to be your impact ambassadors or evangelists? How does that work? How does getting the word out and getting everyone bought in to the DNA of the company?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways. One is that we are super lucky in that many of the employees who come to Block come because of our purpose of economic empowerment. And I find more inbound requests for how can I help than ever needing to ask someone to help. So that is a gift. That is rare air. I mean, when I ran a community radio station, I wish I had that. I was just like running whenever there wasn't someone on air.
So it's a great recruitment and retention tool, you're saying. It's great recruitment, great retention. Love
it. A retention tool. And it's also an indicator of how people are showing up to work. They're showing up to serve our customers, which is just this really beautiful thing. The other is that, like many places, we have a strong volunteer team. Recently in San Francisco, there was just out at Crissy Field, which is one of the landmark, beautiful parks right on the water. There was a local natural habitat restoration effort, and everyone was out working literally in Crissy Field to clean up and make sure native plants were present and that invasive plants were out. But then there's, things like, how can I show up in my local community and participate and serve? And so we get this opportunity to be across volunteer efforts, across product efforts, marketing teams, insights teams, and all of this really allows one another to do our best work together.
And you're also, I assume, encouraging those 11,000 plus employees to share best thoughts or practices up to you in case there's some great ideas in different parts of the globe that could be really beneficial to the company as a whole and to the communities that you serve as a whole.
Absolutely. And to interact with our customers. I mean, the very best thing you can do is go see a Square seller or go, go listen to a Tidal Rising artist when they're performing in your hometown, So these are the ways that we can show up and learn and find out, how also you find out how to be cool. I
Exactly.
love title. I think I'm learning a lot.
Do you put out an annual social impact report?
So we had historically, but what we're finding is the annual just takes too long. So
Yeah.
we're doing it now through constant communication, through blog, through LinkedIn, through social media, sort of all the different channels that are the right format for storytelling. And some ways, like if you're launching something that you'd like engagement or feedback, social media is your tool. And waiting for an annual report is not the right format. I mean, there are annual reports, of course, that we're putting out, sustainability reports or CP or what have you. But really to have a live conversation by publishing regularly and consistently, I think it's just a more rich program.
Since sustainability rolls up to you, talk a little bit about the obviously there's global benefits of being a worldwide company and having a platform like yours in terms of diversity of ideas and thoughts from communities all around the world that you get to hear and learn about and benefit from and benefit the company as a whole from. But go back to the challenges that exist because of the regulations that exist in the world right now and the fact that they are a patchwork quilt of regulations from Asia to Europe to North America and other parts of the world. How do you rationalize that since they're not harmonized yet? And when do you see some harmonization coming into the marketplace to make it somewhat easier on leaders like you so you don't have to focus on the paperwork, you can actually focus on the real work that needs to be done?
I don't know that I have an answer on the when.
Okay.
I do think that there are these beautiful conduits for information exchange that are new. I think that right now we're in this moment with AI, with open source, with learning and sharing and best practice that is an absolute gift. And people are recognizing the speed at which we can communicate with one another to ensure that we're using real data, fast responses when appropriate, thoughtful, methodical responses, but reacting in real time. Just like, I mean, this is a simple analogy, but the RFID chip on the tree telling us health. I mean, we can now use advanced computing. And one of the things that our founder has said many times, one of our founders, that Jack Dorsey has said many times, is that AI is growing, open source is growing, and it's pretty hard to predict what a year from now or 3 years from now looks like. But to not take advantage of the gift of the tool right now, we'd be missing out. So I think that there's this way to really look at the data. From a regulation standpoint, the nerd in me, to go back to my nerd side, I love the ability to learn how another market does something, because often, especially in the regulatory landscape, you get this opportunity to look at what problems are people solving for in other places. Is this a problem that your market experiences now or not yet? Is this, and if not, why? Why not? So you get to, again, just model that deep listening methodology and understand and take back and ingest and make best decisions from informed approaches by other dedicated stakeholders who deeply care. But to use the data, this is the piece that even 2 years ago would have been a different answer.
So interesting. So you're saying let's take the AI day by day, you leverage it for what it's great for right now, and not worry about some existential crisis that's going to cause us in the years ahead, if it even ever comes to that, by the way. Talk about this. There's a whole new generation of young people that listen to this show that really want to be you, Erin, that want to learn how to be you in terms of making a good living, but making a great impact on this planet on a daily basis. But all they're hearing about now from traditional forms of media, and also social media, is that AI is coming for their career. AI is going to wipe out whatever job opportunities they have. What would you say to the next generation of high school, graduate, postgraduate students, both in university and younger, that are feeling the anxiety and the pressure of the constant messaging about AI and the potential traps that it has for their future careers?
Oh, I mean, I'm an educator first, and as an educator, there's always a tenant to lean into the curiosity.
Sure.
And so with that, lean into the learning, lean into the opportunity. We released an AI tool called Goose, and that is the ability to integrate different large language models. I think that for many younger people, what's great is that you have a home court advantage. Everyone is learning this technology at the same time. We're all on the same footing. We're all growing together. There's this beautiful opportunity to take what you, as an individual listening, perhaps are passionate about, solve for the problems that matter to you, to benefit from. And this is actually the thing that I deeply love about AI tools is the ability to aggregate listening. So whereas it's not a replacement, I want to be very clear, the one-to-one human experience or group listening or community listening approach is essential. But also to have this incredible tool where you can take and ingest large amounts of data and better understand problems. It simply allows you to test and practice and see if your approaches can evolve to better serve and solve for your problems. And so I have found that throughout my career, the thing that makes me useful is showing up and solving for the next issue that supports whatever the outcome is, right? So whether that's a problem, whether that's creating an opportunity, whether that's finding novel ways to access capital, or whether that's figuring out, what sort of bespoke regulation a small business needs to operate, in a new community, right? So I think that this is an opportunity moment, not a fear moment. And so I would encourage them to really embrace and experiment. I think there's sort of three things that ground the team that I work with at Block, and it's the preservation of local culture, it's support for small businesses and our customers, and creating economic opportunities for local residents. In any problem I'm approaching or any opportunity we're looking at, I'm thinking about those three things. So as a young person, figure out your bench. What are your 1 to 3 things? What do you want to solve for? And then figure out, what you could learn about it. Use these tools to accelerate your learning at a pace that never existed before.
That's really great advice. Erin, I'll ask you one last question, and I'll let you go then. You've been there 10 years already, and you've accomplished so much. And it's so exciting what you're doing right now. What are you most excited about for 2026 in terms of what you want to accomplish at Block next year?
Wow, such a good answer. Okay, so personal goal is to listen to a title rising artist each month in a genre I'm not as deeply familiar with. So I'm trying to really up my music game.
Wow, that's cool.
Maybe not a global goal, but I am here to say that I've got some learning to do. And then as a team, there's this very exciting moment for us to show up for our small business communities and customers, actually thinking about the ways in which we can make their lives easier. So what AI tools might support them? What sort of hardware could help their community? So I think figuring out where there are gaps, where there are opportunities to be curious, figuring out sort of who the next cohort of business owners are and what those models will look like. 2 years ago, I would not have predicted that blended storefront models would be such an important hit in creating an experience within retail. But we've learned that that's what keeps people coming back to Main Street businesses. We've learned that restaurants providing, unique dining experiences, it's the thing that you remember, that you come back for. So I'm excited to see sort of how community continues to build itself and what ways we need to show up.
I love it. For our listeners and viewers to find Erin and her colleagues and all the great work they're doing in social responsibility, impact, and sustainability, please go to www.block.xyz. Block.xyz. We'll put it in the show notes so you don't have to stop what you're doing and write it down or any of that kind of stuff. Erin, thanks, first of all, for your time today and sharing your personal journey and the journey of impact and social responsibility and sustainability at Block. But most importantly, thank you for a lifetime of making the world a better place.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.